I've been making tech videos on YouTube for nearly 12 years, and as someone who has both purchased and received hundreds, if not thousands, of tech products over the years, I often get the question, of all this crap that you have, what do you actually use? And of the technology that you use frequently, what do you do on it? And so I figured I would answer those questions. Let's start out with my everyday carry, the things that I have on my person at all times. There are 5 things: an iPhone 11 Pro, a Samsung Galaxy Z Flip, my wallet, a knife, and some form of mechanical wristwatch. So let's go through them. Let's start with the knife. You might be wondering, why do you have a knife? Well, good question. Certainly not for self-defense. I mean, look at the size of this thing. It's really only good for threatening employees. But it actually does serve a number of functions. I mean, you need a knife a lot of the time. We cut open packages. I do a lot of DIY projects. It's nice to have something sharp and on hand at all times. This is a Spyderco Ladybug. It is a very, very, very tiny knife, but one that is incredibly sharp and a very effective knife. It uses VG10 steel. It's really well built. They're not the cheapest knives on the block, but man, this thing is awesome and I love having it with me. My wallet is a Secret wallet, and this is one that a lot of you guys recommended to me. I was skeptical that it was going to be too bulky, but I ended up really liking it. What's cool about it is it has a quick deploy card slot, and so you pull this little lever down here, all of your cards reveal themselves, and you can select the one that you want at any time. But it also, unlike some of the other options on the market, has a traditional wallet style. So you can fit cards in here. I have my ID up here. In this center pocket, I actually have my Tesla NFC key card in case my phone dies, which is pretty handy. And then you even have room for bills right here as well. It's just a simple, versatile wallet. It's made out of leather and aluminum, and I think it's a nice buy. You might have noticed that unlike a lot of your other favorite tech YouTubers, which I realize I'm not, but unlike some of them, I don't wear a smartwatch, and there's a couple reasons why. Number one, I feel that it, for me at least, adds unnecessary distraction. But number two, and this is the real reason, I love mechanical watches. Watches to me are fascinating. The fact that they can run these things without batteries, that they are cities of cogs and gears and very finely calibrated and engineered parts are what's so cool. What makes them even cooler is that most of my watches are vintage. They were made before the dawn and the age of the computers, before CAD modeling. These were all mapped out by hand on paper. It's really cool. I mean, for example, this watch that I'm wearing today is a Gruen Airflight. This was manufactured in the mid-1960s. And the reason that this watch is cool is because you can see that right now it has a standard 1 to 12 kind of legend for your hour markers. But as I scroll the clock past noon, it switches to a 24-hour dial. That's completely manual. There's no computers or electronics in here making that happen. It's a fascinating little watch. I really think it looks great too. And it's just one of the reasons that I love mechanical watches. So yeah, I always have one on. I match it with my outfits. I buy new ones. It's really a sickness. I have a problem. I have too many. Please help me. My main SIM card is in an iPhone. Why an iPhone? Lots of reasons, but the biggest reason is iMessage. Unlike other parts of the world where Telegram and WhatsApp are ubiquitous, here in the United States, it's SMS or iMessage. And so I've chosen the latter. Now, my home screen layout is very intentional, even though it might not look like it, because it is designed for efficiency and speed. I know a lot of people are going to be annoyed by this, but let me give you an example. So the Tesla folder is up here. This holds a bunch of apps like analytics on my car, how its relative performance is to the rest of Tesla's fleet, where I can find specific charge points using PlugShare. These are all good apps, but the actual Tesla app is not inside the Tesla folder. Huh? What? Why? Yeah, well, that's because I use the Tesla app all the time, and I want it to be right at my access, or I want it to be right where my thumb would normally access. Having to get into a folder and reach up high is not ideal. And so all the apps that I use with frequency are down here at the bottom of the screen. I have my phone, I have my email client, which is Spark, I have Safari, I have Tweetbot. Tweetbot is my preferred Twitter client of choice. Why don't I use the regular Twitter app? Well, I do. It's here on the second page. But the main reason I don't use the primary Twitter client is that this old school Twitter design style with third-party clients allows you to sort through your timeline chronologically. There's none of this like, here's what your friends liked and all of that crap. And there's no ads. So it's really convenient. But you don't get access to polls and a couple of other features, which is why I still have the other Twitter app available. As we move up screen, all of these apps should be pretty familiar to you. Snapchat, Instagram messages, Slack, nothing new there. The Tesla app is, like I mentioned, my digital car key. I do have that physical card key I mentioned earlier, but that's not generally how I access the phone. My Tesla Model 3 interfaces with my phone over Bluetooth. So as long as I have my phone in my pocket and it's turned on, I can go up to my car, grab a door handle, the car opens, and then I close the door, I walk away, and the car locks. It's pretty awesome. A couple other apps down here on the bottom. I have YouTube Studio. This is basically YouTube dashboard for creators. And so people who make videos, this allows me to look at analytics and change thumbnails and monetization settings on the fly because YouTube's mobile website is crap. So luckily this is a decent substitute. I have the YouTube app. Narwhal is my Reddit client of choice. I know. Everyone's gonna say, well, use Apollo. It's prettier, it's faster, it's better. I don't like Apollo. I really like the guy that makes Apollo. I really appreciate the design style behind Apollo, but Reddit has always been a really ugly, crappy website that was fast. And Narwhal, I feel, captures that essence. It's not pretty, comment sorting is kind of weird, but once you get used to it, it is faster than any other Twitter client, and you can fit a ton of information into your screen size. Whereas other clients like Narwhal, I feel expand stuff a little bit too much. Other apps that call the attention. I'm using 1Password. This is what I use for password management now. I used to use Dashlane. Dashlane was a sponsor of the channel. And I just felt in the past couple of months that it was getting a little buggy. I wasn't getting autofill on Catalina. The iPhone app was feeling particularly slow. And so I told Dashlane, you guys are great. I love your product, but it's kind of not been super great lately. And I didn't re-renew my advertising contract with them, and I won't until they fix their crap. So get on that. In the meantime, I'm really enjoying 1Password. Podcasts. There is no better podcast app than Overcast. And if you're using anything other than Overcast, you should consider switching. It's not the prettiest. I think Pocket Cast, which is what I use on Android, it's available for iOS too, is much more attractive. But Pocket Cast has a couple of features that are fantastic. One of them is that it does this amazing auto shortening feature. So they call it auto speed. It basically shortens and cuts out all silences between when people are talking or when they're pausing before they speak. And then it also modulates speed based on how quickly the person talks so that everyone's speed is kind of matched. It has a couple of really cool things. And Overcast, I think, is a really great podcast client. Speaking of podcasts, you should check out my podcast Flashback from Relay FM. Okay, I've got Tidal. Instead of using Apple Music or Spotify, I subscribe to Tidal. I'm one of 12 people that do. You're welcome, Jay-Z. The reason I do it is because it has high fidelity, lossless streaming. And so if I want CD quality music, I can use that here. As we move up, things get pretty boring. Dark Sky is my weather app of choice. I also like Carrot Weather. It was just purchased by Apple, so this app might disappear in the next couple of months and years. It might be integrated into the stock iOS weather app. I don't know. This app used to be available for Android, and now it is not. So sorry, Android people, Apple kind of sucks. They bought the app, it's really great, and then they killed it for Android, and it's still available for iOS. Right here, I have a folder for church. This is just a bunch of apps that my church publishes. The library tools, or the library app, is just a scriptures app. If you're interested in just like getting a Bible, I feel like most of the Bible apps on the App Store are really bad. Gospel Library is really good. So if you want just a Bible, it's not a bad app for getting that. Rune, I've talked about Rune in the past, and I'll link to that video. Rune is basically my music server at home, so I can select what hi-fi system I want to play my music on, and Rune does that, which is pretty sweet. I've got my Tesla apps I've already talked about, and then at the top, I've got Fantastical, which is my calendar app of choice. I like it because you can use natural language to enter events, so you could say, lunch with Derek on Thursday at 7. I don't know why we would be having lunch at 7, but there you go. And you could say at Fleming's. I can't afford Fleming's and all the restaurants are closed. So joke's on Derek. But anyway, that's why I like this app. It does a pretty good job at that. And then Tovala. I've talked about Tovala in the past. I think people think they're a sponsor just because I like them so much. They're not. They've never given me money. In fact, I've given them too much money. But it's a meal service. We don't have an office here, and I don't have time to prep lunch. And rather than eating out every day, which is expensive and not very healthy, I've decided to order these meals in. The meals themselves are actually pretty good, but what I think is cool is the oven. It's a steam oven that does baking, broiling, and steaming. And what's cool about it is basically any food from Trader Joe's and a lot of like Pop-Tarts, for example, you can scan the barcode into the machine, and the chefs at Tovala, I don't know if they're chefs, the people at Tovala that makes it sound fancy, the chefs have created special recipes for people to be able to cook this stuff in their oven. So like a Pop-Tart, steams it for a couple minutes so that it gets really moist and doesn't dry out like it does in a toaster. And then it bakes it so that it gets firm like a toaster, but that it's still soft and not crumbly. It's a great oven. I really like it. It's dumb, but I enjoy it. And then my second page is filled with basically all my other apps. These are organized based on what they are, so loyalty apps, studio apps, but generally when I need to access one of these apps, I just pull down the spotlight bar and search for everything. A couple studio apps that are particularly interesting is like Luxley Composer, for example, allows us to switch our LED lights on command, the color, temperature, how bright they are, different color modes, which is pretty cool. Wingman is a piece of software that we use with our sound mixer, which allows us to begin recording and mark stuff. Really handy. And yeah, other than that, there's a couple other apps that are pretty low key, like iMeasure. Why would I have this? Well, because then I can measure, maybe if it goes. There we go. My eyes are 60.4 millimeters apart. Why would you care about that? Virtual reality, baby. Interpupillary distance is an important measure in VR, how far apart your pupils are. Because if you have your lenses offset, then your eyes go cross-eyed. That's how you get sick in VR. So that's a free app. That's pretty cool. And other than that, Tapforms, for example, is an app that we use to manage inventory at Snazzy Labs. We have a lot of stuff. We want to keep track of it. If we ever get robbed, we want to know what we have. And then we also have a lot of stuff that I check out, I take home. Derek will take home with him. And it allows us to just say like, hey, here's all the stuff we have. Here are the serial numbers. This is when they were purchased. And this is where they're located. And that's basically it. Oh, one last app I want to talk to you about, Libby. Libby is a really cool app that if you live in the United States, you should download it. It allows you to borrow books from your library for free, digitally. So rather than having to go to the library and checking out a book, you can rent it on your Kindle or on your ebook reader or on your phone even by using your regular library card. And it has access to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of books that you can rent for your local library for free. So no more buying ebooks. It's freaking awesome. That's my iPhone. On my Galaxy Z Flip, it's pretty much the same as my iPhone, at least in terms of layout. Now, there is some app variants. For example, I use Google Calendar because Fantastical is not available for Android. And I have certain apps like QuickBooks, which I have on my home screen on Android that I don't on iOS, because this is kind of my business phone. So I actually do most of my email on here. I think that Spark, my preferred email client, is actually better on Android than it is on iOS, which is pretty cool. And then the best Twitter client ever made, Flamingo, is on Android. Unfortunately, you can't buy Flamingo anymore because Twitter is stupid and they will only give you a certain number of license keys. And once you run out, then you can't sell your app anymore. It's ridiculous and absurd. So Flamingo has been basically unavailable for purchase for like 2-3 years now, but the developer continues to update it for people that have purchased it in the past. It's the best thing ever. Amazing app. It's what Marquez Brownlee uses. So if you needed any further endorsement of an app there you go. Now that I've talked about the stuff that I use every day, I want to talk about the stuff that I don't use perhaps every day, but at least every week. And I've kept it all in this handy backpack from Wandered. Not because I actually store the stuff in here. I mean, I usually leave it in my car. I live in a big city. I drive everywhere. But because I actually take all of this stuff when I travel, and this is the backpack that I take it in. This backpack is designed for camera gear, and I actually think as a camera gear bag, it's not very good. But as a general use backpack, I quite like it. It's heavy canvas, it's waterproof, it's spacious, there's a nice padded area for your laptop, it's good. But I want to talk about this, the Nintendo Switch Lite. Why the Switch Lite as opposed to something like the full-size Switch? Well, you know, portable game consoles are really nothing new to me. I've owned them for years and years and years. My first game console was a Game Boy Color. And what I really like about the Nintendo Switch is its portability, more so than its switchability. And the reality is that the Switch Lite is not only $100 less money, but it's also way lighter. The display is a much better quality. It's the same resolution, but in a smaller size. It's brighter. The battery life is better. You don't get the annoying squeakiness that you get with the regular Switch. It just feels more rigid. And when you travel, light is important. I love this thing. There are some downsides though. The most obvious one is that it doesn't dock to a TV. It doesn't switch. And for that reason, I think that most people should go out and buy the regular size Switch. I've bought this as a secondary console, but the reality is that Nintendo sucks so badly at online. Trying to juggle my two systems are a joke. The one at home always has to stay connected to the internet because this is my primary console, which means if my other Switch doesn't have a network connection, it can't actually play any of the games that I own. It has to check on the internet every time to make sure that this Switch isn't already playing them. That's really stupid. And then the other thing is cloud saves, which should just sync in between systems like they do on PlayStation and Xbox and PC, don't. I have to manually download my save data from my other Switch every time I want to play, and vice versa. It's kind of a joke. It's really frustrating. Nintendo needs to get into the 21st century. But the Switch Lite is a really good piece of hardware. If they sold this for $300 with TV output, I would absolutely buy this over the standard Nintendo Switch. It's excellent. Next up, my Kobo. The what, bruh? Yeah, Kobo is owned by a Japanese company, Rakuten, which is basically kind of the Japanese Amazon. And it's really the only good competitor there is to the Amazon Kindle. Why do I use a Kobo instead of a Kindle, you might be wondering? It comes down to one thing, and that's the hardware. Kindle hardware is not bad, don't get me wrong, and Amazon's ecosystem is incredible. But one thing I really like about Kobo is, in particular, this model, the Forma, is how light and ergonomic it is. The Kindle Oasis is made out of aluminum and glass, and it just doesn't feel good in the hand. It's too heavy, it's uncomfortable, it looks pretty, but functionally it's bad. This thing looks abominable, but functionally it's fantastic. You get this tapered design, which makes it really comfortable to hold in one hand. There's an accelerometer which allows you to tilt it in any direction you want, including landscape, which is good for those manga fans out there. I'm not, but if you are, that's a good thing. They have actually a really good manga library apparently because Japanese company, so there's perks to owning a Kobo. One other thing I really like is that it has bicolor LEDs, and so you can actually change the color temperature of the Kobo dependent on what time of day it is. You can set it to go automatically or get warmer as the night progresses. The backlight is extremely bright. I find it to be more even than the Kindle products. And then this 7-inch display is the biggest screen on any e-reader, and it's flexible and waterproof. It cracks. It's a little spooky feeling. Build quality is, again, not seemingly that impressive, but it's super light. It is very, very durable, and I really, really love it. I have owned this for a couple of years, and I don't ever see myself going back to Kobo. Oh, that reminds me, by the way, remember that Libby app we talked about on the iPhone? That's owned by Rakuten. Overdrive is owned by Rakuten. And so what happens is if you have your phone, if you have a Kobo, you can automatically rent books from your library directly on the Kobo. So I search the Kobo store, and you're not going to find this on the Kindle. Instead of buying the book, I just press rent from my library, and it allows me to rent it for a couple weeks and renew directly from the device itself, or I can use that Libby app on my phone to sync stuff automatically. Kobo is really awesome and worth checking out if you are an avid reader who wants to do it on the cheap. Next up, the Fujifilm X-T30. Look, the camera system on the iPhone 11 Pro is incredible, but you can't beat physics. You have a larger sensor, you have larger glass, you're gonna get better photos, and that's what you get with this Fujifilm X-T30. It's a mirrorless camera system. It has these really tiny compact lenses, which I like, because there's a lot of mirrorless cameras that are small, but then they have these ginormous lenses. The glass on this stuff is tiny. This is a 35mm prime. The styling and design is kind of retro. You have access to all of your manual controls without having to go through menus, but you do have a touchscreen for tap to autofocus. It's just a really, really good camera, and it's less than $1,000, which is shocking. It has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, which allows me to sync the photos that I take to my phone real time in the background. It just works really well, and it's Fujifilm. I mean, the color is fantastic. I love real cameras, and I don't see smartphones really replacing these anytime soon, if ever. The last item I have in my bag is this, the 12.9-inch 2020 iPad Pro. Now, wait a minute, you're thinking, last item? Where's your MacBook? You're the Mac guy. Surely you have a MacBook in your travel bag. No, I really don't. I don't travel with a Mac anymore because the iPad Pro has gotten so powerful. Let me give you an example of what I did the other day. I upgraded my server's firmware by downloading the firmware from a website online, uploading it to my server over the web interface, and then verifying that it had installed correctly using SSH, and then transferring files from my iPad over the network to the server using the Files app. That's amazing. I never would have been able to do that a year ago. And these stupid ads that Apple's been doing, like,
hey,
what you doing on your computer there?
What's a computer? Okay, yeah, that's how we're gonna do it. That thing I'm spraying with the hose right now?
This is a computer, it's better than a computer. That was the first instance in where I was like, this iPad Pro is actually a computer. And every year it's getting better at things that can make it a viable computer replacement for a lot of people, including me. You look at editing apps, LumaFusion is an incredible application on iPad that allows you to edit 4K video faster than you can in Final Cut Pro on a Mac. Something like Affinity Photo is an excellent Photoshop replacement on the desktop, and with something like the Apple Pencil, makes it way better for digital artists than even working on the desktop. And it's not this thing of like, oh, well, yeah, it's Photoshop, but not really because it's on the iPad. No, it's Photoshop as you have it on your computer, feature for feature. It's incredible how powerful these devices are getting, and I am really excited for the future of iPad. I'm going to talk about this more in the next coming months once the Magic Keyboard is available. I have one on order. I bought it today. It is coming. I think cursor support is really important for iPad Pro, and I think the reason we haven't seen Pro apps from Apple, like Final Cut Pro for iPad, is because of that. Now that it's here, I think Apple's gonna blow open the doors and truly blow our minds of what a tiny little tablet without a fan with a 12-hour battery life can do with a keyboard attached to the side. I'm stoked, and you should be too. And so there you have it. Now you know what's in my everyday carry and not so everyday carry. Let me know in the comments below what you carry with you on the daily. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you didn't, well, that other button seems to work okay too. Get subscribed for more awesome tech videos like this one. But most importantly, stay safe, stay at home, and as always, stay snazzy.